Welcome to Transformations with Tara. This is Tara Sutphen, and my guest today is Brett Cotter, who is Stress is Gone, and he has written a book about PTSD and important matters in our society today. And thank you, Brett, for being here talking about this today. And Jason D. McKean, he is the voice of over a million Ohm recordings throughout the world. And thank you, Jason, for being on the show today as well.
Hi, Tara. Hi, Brett.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So anyway, so you wrote a book. Tell me the book.
So in 2015, I published the book, The 3 Keys to Managing PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 keys are learn how to stop a stress reaction, process the trauma, and meditate every day. And I dedicated that book to my father, who is a Marine Vietnam veteran and also a New York City firefighter.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So nothing like two big things happening in his life, all his life, to create a lot of stress.
Yeah, and he had a ton of stress growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, my grandmother, his mom, died by suicide when my father was 5 or 6. And that kind of threw the family into a tizzy after that. Then he went to Vietnam. And on the last couple of weeks of his service, his older brother, passed away in a tragic car accident. And his older brother was like his hero. Gary Cotter was his name. He was a Golden Gloves boxer, great athlete. Um, the family at that time was in Flushing, New York. And my father flew home, but he got back the day after his funeral and burial. Then he had to go back to Vietnam for 2 more weeks, and he thought he was definitely not coming back, going back the second time from everything that he saw. He had to leave the jungle once because of infections. He had a shrapnel from a booby trap that blew up on his leg. Not to get too graphic, but he was cutting it out for like a week or so, but then the infection got so bad, he had to leave the jungle. And when he came back, his entire group was gone. The entire group was gone. So he just felt by the time he came back to Vietnam for that second time, even though it was only for a few weeks, he really felt he was not going to make it home and he's going there to die. And a lot of his friends that I met after my father passed away, told me that when he came back that second time, there was something, really different and just like tweaked. So I dedicated the book to my dad. My father passed away in 2014. I cried for like 6 months and came up with a new technique. I'm like the guinea pig for all of the techniques that I teach people and share with people, but I came up with a technique to reconnect with our loved ones that have passed away and to help process that pain. So once I was using that technique for a while, processed the pain, and then started writing the book because I wanted to share really good stress management tools with veterans that were kind of like my dad. He couldn't really use apps because he had huge hands. And it just felt like it wasn't natural to him.
Mm-hmm.
And a workbook anybody can use. So the workbook is on Amazon. Veterans love it. I get a bunch printed up when we do our retreats and hand them out to the veterans that are there at our retreats.
Right. Wow. So, but then he continued to be a hero and went into firefighting. I mean, that's interesting that he just felt compelled that he needed to, be a warrior kind of all his life. And that, losing a mom early, that's really, and by her own hand, that's pretty sad
Yeah. And
right away.
my father's father was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was super difficult for all the kids to deal with in the family. Coming back from Vietnam, my father was trying out different trades, and then the fire department called after he took the test. He went in, and then he got sucked in the 70s and 80s into the New York City uh, firefighters kind of like party circuit, right? That's how he dealt with his pain and trauma. before he passed, he said, the absurd helps us deal with the absurd. So he got sucked into that like hurricane, like so many of, the guys that were working in the city then,
Mm,
um, to escape their pain, right? And that's where he found relief, right? So he was self-medicating, partying heavily. My mother divorced him when I was 6.
mm,
And that's where my story starts with stress and trauma.
mhm.
So his was the work hard and then party hard, like philosophy to just kind of like work through his stress or just kind of keep it at bay.
It was kind of like the way his energy was such, any of his friends will tell you, and any of one that was around him, he was kind of like a one-man band, full of jokes, full of life, full of just funny stuff. However, there was still a lot of, alcohol involved in that. The way he dealt with his stress was 3 ways: Budweiser, mowing his lawn, which he did like 3 times a week on a 5-acre property, and telling jokes, right?
Mhm.
So if you were on an 8-hour car ride with him, you'd be laughing the whole way, right? Um, so towards the end of his life, I would say the last 15 years, we became really close. The last 5 years, we became super duper close. Where if I was having a tough day, if I was in family court, for my son, and I just felt all alone and felt like I was having a terrible day, he would just call me out of the blue and say, "Son, I was just feeling like you were having a tough day. How are you doing?" So me and him started to really connect on like an energetic level, which was really, I feel like healing for the both of us. And yeah, so his life trajectory, his personality was almost like a, a lawnmower, like when you start it up and then you just rev it and it just goes. And I could remember, sleeping over his house, even as a young kid at times, and he would just pop up at 6 in the morning, like literally jump out of bed, and then he was, off to the races. Um, but again, later on in his life, when you would go to his house, like towards the last 2 or 3 years, he would have like the ambient music playing. He actually started feeding deer out of his hands. 3 generation of deer would come over to him. So he started feeding, like, first was like a fawn, but then the next year, a few years later, they would have babies. And then, so at one point there was 3 generations, eating out of his hand, probably the last year that he passed. And one of his really good firehouse buddies took a beautiful picture of him doing that before he passed.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It's better late than never. He opened his heart. You were able to help him do that.
So here's the story about me and my dad with stress relief.
Mhm.
So I remember like it was yesterday, we were talking on a Tuesday night, right? I was going in, I also did a lot of coaching in my neighborhood with like youth sports, football, basketball, things like that. We were going in for a coaches meeting, and I was in the parking lot before the meeting. I called him, supposed to be testing out this new app that I was doing in 2014. It was called PTSD Free, right? And that app is still out today. And he wasn't getting back to me. He was like ducking me. And I needed it. I really wanted his feedback to see like what he liked about the app, what was not good.
Yeah.
And I finally got a hold of him that Tuesday night as I'm walking into this meeting. And he's like, "Brett, I feel terrible. So sorry I haven't gotten back to you." He's like, "I just can't use it." I'm like, "What's going on?" He goes, "My hands, like I'm not an app guy." And I was like, "Dad, that's fine." I was like, "Why don't we just get to your PTSD with coaching?" Right. And I said, "What am I doing this with any veterans if the ones that are most important to me are slipping through my fingers?" Right. "Would you do a coaching session with me?" And he said, "Are you sure you want to pop the lid off this top?"
Hmm.
He always thought his demons were too big for him, right? They were much bigger than him. And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm serious. I want to do this." So that was Tuesday night. He said, "Okay, let's do the session on Friday." Long story short, the next day at 12 noon, while he was shopping for his wacky Wednesday barbecue with 2 of his best friends, one was also a New York City firefighter and an Air Force pilot, and the other is a NYPD retired officer and a Vietnam medic. So they would hang out every Wednesday. They were going shopping for their barbecue, and he has a bleeding stroke in the center of his brain. And 11 days later, we buried him. He was in a coma for 9 days, and then we buried him. So we actually never got to do that coaching session on that Friday. And that to me was not only devastating because, I lost him. And I remember driving to the hospital on one of the final days that he was, in the coma. With my mom was taking me there. We were on the Palisades Parkway, and it was in the fall, and the leaves were blowing, and it was almost like we were in a snow globe. It was like a timeless moment. Landslide was playing by Stevie Nicks, and I was bawling. And she said, Brett, these are very old tears. Because when they first got divorced, my father was not showing up for the visitations, but he would call and he would say he's on his way, and then he would never show up. And I was left on the stoop, just waiting, looking at every car going by, crying on the stoop. And then when my mother would come out, I would wipe my tears away really quick and pretend I wasn't crying. So those tears that I was crying when he passed were like unearthed from my cellular memory from losing him the first time.
Right, the lid, your lid.
That was my lid, yeah. And I did a ton of work on the inner child stuff about losing him, issues with my mom, but there's some things you're just not going to get to until life triggers it in you. And that's, what happened there. And I would say it was like 8 years before he passed. I asked him, I said, Dad, why would you miss some birthdays? Why did you call and then not show up, a lot? And he said, Brett, I drove by 1,000 times. I couldn't turn the corner. I couldn't turn the corner of the block. It was too painful for him to turn the corner and drive up and face the failure, right, of the marriage, of him coming home to that house, of him not being able to be there for us. And he didn't have the inner strength, and in that moment, his demons did get the best of him, and keep him from being there for us the best he could have, right? But all things have a purpose, right? And him not being there for me then is what actually brought me into the healing work when I was 27.
Right. Learning our coping skills. Yeah.
Well, I didn't really have any coping skills. I was an angry, jealous, rageful maniac. So it wasn't really coping. So like the sadness from 6 to 9, 6 to 10 turned into anger around 15, right? And I was getting into a lot of altercations in the street in Queens. I had football, which was a great outlet for my aggression, but with my relationships with women from age 15 to 27, after around the 18-month mark into the relationship, jealousy would come out like crazy, and it would ruin one relationship after the next. So when I was living in California, outside of, the New York environment, where trouble would just seem to come to me, California, it was like if I got into trouble there, it was like I had to find it, right? So the environment was a little bit more copacetic for me to actually grow up into myself. So I got into meditation when I was 27 and quickly realized that pattern of jealousy. And I was in another relationship and I didn't want my jealousy to ruin it. So I found,
Can I ask how you were introduced to meditation?
oh yeah. So one night, an ex-girlfriend calls me, middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. She says, Brett, I know we haven't spoken in a long time. I'm just calling to tell you because I have an important intuitive message for you. And she never said anything like that before in our relationship. She said that I'm guided to tell you that you need to learn how to meditate. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Talked for a few more minutes, hung up. And then I just thought it was weird that she called out of the blue. So I picked up a book that I was reading. It was about technical remote viewing, which is kind of like astral projection, but there's a lot of technique involved. So the chapter that I opened up to, which was the next chapter, it opens up with saying, you need to practice meditation. I think it was Siddhi's meditation before you can proceed in this book. So I was like, oh man, this is wild. So she just calls me out of the blue. I open up the book and now I'm like, Now I can't go to sleep. So I turn on the TV, and for the first time in my life, I see this guy, Joel Osteen, and he's going like this: you have to learn how to meditate.
So it's
So
everywhere.
so it's three things in the middle of the night. So that night, I went on the internet and found a transcendental meditation retreat that was happening that weekend, like 10 minutes from my house, and went to it. And that's when I learned how to meditate in 1999.
Mhm.
So it was an ex-girlfriend who like
Yeah.
Yeah.
who led you to that, who started the process anyway,
Yeah.
and you like, you know, took it up.
Yeah. I felt like, I was a pretty thick-headed person. And like those three signs right after one another in the middle of the night, I was like, it's a no-brainer. I have to do this.
Yeah.
And it changed my life forever. There was an incredible experience on that Sunday on my first solo meditation in my house, because in the Friday night, all day Saturday, they're guiding you through the meditation process. They give you your mantra. And then Sunday morning, before you show up to the retreat center, they want you to do one meditation on your own. And that one, totally changed my life forever. That really put me on the path and solidified it.
What happened?
I had like a quadruple out of body experience. I sat down, I was looking out a sliding glass window, looking over the PCH. I was living at Promontory Point at the time on Jamboree, and closed my eyes. And immediately I had the viewpoint of above me in my loft looking down at my body. I was like, whoa, this is wild. And then there was light coming from the right of me, which was in the living room. So my body's still seated inside on the chair, looking out the window, eyes closed. I have the perspective up top, look over, see the light, and then I go back into the body. I move my consciousness and I go into the living room. And what I'm looking at in front of me is my body as a light body, about 4.5 feet in the air, parallel to the ground, looking up like that, looking up at the ceiling, with like, if you could imagine like 1,000 hula hoops of multicolored light spinning in different directions. And it was like unlocking and configuring. And I just remember just looking at this thing like in amazement and in pure awe. And after a little while of standing there with my conscious looking at that, then I went back to the chair from that perspective, saw the top perspective, looked over again, and then came out of the meditation. And that just totally changed everything for me. That I felt was like an anointing and an awakening and like an introduction to my light body, that part of me.
Mhm. Yeah, sounds beautiful. I mean, what an experience.
It was
That
it was
was
amazing.
definitely you were being led to change your life for sure.
A
Mm,
1,000%. 1,000%. And when the signs were that strong, I just continued to flock to it like a moth to the flame, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. And and it led you to do PTSD and Stress is Gone.
So
Yeah, and this is your company, right? Stress is Gone is your website
mhm.
.com. Okay. And then you guys are having a summit in a couple of weeks.
So we have a very special women's retreat in 2 weeks from February 9th to the 14th. We're ending on Valentine's Day. And what we do in these retreats, it's a very special process of reopening the heart so you could actually unconditionally love all the pain that is inside of your body, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that is the pains that you experience in the present moment. But more importantly, we get to the inner child issues from our family of origin. So really what we're doing is going back to those key relationships where we didn't receive the love that we needed, right? Whether that's with our father or with our mother, we go back and call in our higher self. So however the person refers to their higher self, their personal higher power, we use that word. And what I found is that when their soul pain is on the table and we call in their higher power, it actually holds the pain in a chalice of unconditional self-love until the pain unlocks and releases from the cells in your body. And you actually feel it release in layers until there's nothing left but open space where all the tension and pain was. And then we use meditation, movement, and dance to anchor in joy, self-confidence, and inner peace throughout the week. So that's kind of like our agenda at the retreat.
And where is the retreat going to be?
It's at the Himalayan Institute in Pennsylvania. It's about an hour and a half west of New York City.
Yeah, sounds fun. So you can find all the information on your website. And
Yeah, so if you go,
you still have room for people to come?
yeah, so if you go to stressisgone.com, you'll see like a little top banner up top. It says, check out our new women's retreat from February 9th to the 14th. It also has a weekend option. So you could register for the 5 days, which is $299, or just a weekend, Friday to Sunday for $149. And then you just get your accommodations through the Himalayan Institute. The accommodations are really affordable. It depends on the kind of room you want. They go anywhere from like $105 per night with food included, all the way up to like, I think, $275, depending on, the type of room you want.
That's great.
So there is room left because they have the option of upgrading our retreat room, right? So right now we're in a retreat space. They have multiple spaces there. It's set on a 400-acre beautiful campus in the heart of the Pocono Mountains with like trails everywhere. There's a waterfall deep into the woods. We have a bonfire on this place called the Sound of Music Hill, where you're overlooking the mountains under the stars and the moonlight. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We get some really heavy lifting done emotionally with all the emotional healing of like grief of lost loved ones, overwhelmed from having special needs children, relationships ending, financial issues, whatever your stress is coming from. We have a lot of, veterans that come, first responders, a lot of caregivers come, people that are caring for elderly parents. That's some complex issues there. If we actually had issues with those parents as children, and now they're continuing to trigger us as we're caring for them. So it's an amazing group that comes. We really gel as a group, even on the first night. The first night we're closing out with music. It's going to be a Stevie Nicks night, where we start out with like an ambient initial start to the sound and the movement. Then we go to an acoustic version of her music. Then it's an original sound, and then it's like a more of like a BPM dance version of a few of her songs. And it really brings out so much joy, especially after the healing happens, and it grounds it into the body. It anchors that joy in, so it's safe to be in the body. One of our retreats a few years ago, there was a young woman that had so much anxiety and so much pain, she was afraid to talk. And in the dance section after our first night, she started crying. So I went over to her. I said, what's the matter? And she said that I just never felt joy like this. And she was actually crying tears of joy. And then it soaked in, and then she was able to move and dance. So it is really,
It's nice.
it's deep work. I know it's my soul's purpose to facilitate the energy,
Absolutely.
and it's something that I really love doing.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
And
Thanks.
so you do men's groups too, and then mixed groups probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Do the mixed groups work as well?
so the mixed groups are really cool because you have a mixture of men and women. You also have a mixture of veterans, non-veterans, first responders, non-first responders, and no one knows who they are. Normally, like in a veterans group, everyone starts off with like, I'm an Army veteran, I'm a Marine veteran, Navy, Air Force, and it's like your identity. We don't get into any of the identity stuff, any of the story. We go right into the source of our pain, and then everybody bonds because the people in the retreat learn more about you on the first night than most of your family members know, or even your best friends. And people just create this amazing bond. And it's the last day that I usually say, how many veterans do we have? Show of hands. And then I hand out, my workbook for the veterans. Everyone else, they get a retreat workbook that has all the tools in there as well. And it kind of sinks them into our online membership because I teach 4 times a week. My wife teaches twice a week. So each week we have these 20-minute sessions happening all throughout the week, and we have the recordings inside the membership. So that's really how people kind of like maintain that state of empowerment and self-confidence, inner peace and joy. Because if they don't maintain it, stress is such that the seas of anxiety just suck you out into the ocean, the way life is. A friend of mine put it that life is like an escalator and you're trying to walk up it, but the escalator is coming down. And if you stand still, life just kind of drags you down. So it's almost like you got to put work into it. So the membership is just 20 minutes a day. You go in, you pick a meditation you want or a movement session you want, and it really just, opens up that sense of inner peace, clarity, and the joy.
Oh, yeah. No, well, I've been a hypnotherapist for, I don't know, 35 years now. So I know exactly. I mean, just to find that, what is the magic key to just a release some of that guilt, shame, upsets, it sounds like you're doing great work. It's really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's my personality goes 200 miles away, and I just really lock in to the moment, the collective higher power that is created by everyone in the group showing up.
Yeah.
And I'm a clairaudient empath, so the easiest way I describe actually what I'm doing is it's like a triangle. So we have the collective higher power up top. In the center, I see it as like a ball of light. That's one point in the triangle. Then the back of my head, I hear the messages coming in here. And then the person that I'm working with in the group is the other point in the triangle. So I can actually see and feel the issue inside their body that they're talking through. And then right when we get to the source of the issue, their core trauma from their childhood, and we usually get there in about 3 to 5 minutes through an intuitive line of questioning that I've been honing for 25 years. That's when I start to listen to the messaging coming in that I hear. I say the words, and then the individual repeats those words, and then the tension releases from their body. The cool thing is, anyone that has similar trauma in the group, all their pain starts coming up, and then everyone in the group starts doing those affirmations together. And that's also how we ground and gel in the group energy. So I call it like higher self affirmations or higher self mantras is what's coming through. And you're literally commanding light through the area in your body that's housing the tension. And then you're embracing it with that part of you that's one with everything.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's a mindset when working with veterans and all, where there can be this warrior mindset where one is their relationship with vulnerability, because it's like, I'm a warrior, damn it, and so I'm supposed to not feel pain, where with your techniques, do you feel like you're able to bypass that identity so that you can get to the core of what is at the source of their upset, and to allow for them to release it and not to hold on to it?
Yeah, so all we're doing is breaking that thick, hardened layer of like cake, that the ego is. And the questions really pick the lock to the back of the psyche. And, I'll tell you that a lot of the veterans inside of our groups, they're talking through the inner child stuff, the family of origin stuff, and it's bypassing a lot of the combat trauma. Sometimes combat trauma comes up, but mostly it's, deeper stuff from childhood. Because that stuff kind of manifests everything else we've been through. And once we get to the core issues, everything else that came after that kind of falls like dominoes. Once we get to that initial card, it's like a house of cards, and you pull that one in the middle, and then it all just kind of drops. And I remember my first retreat that in 1999 with my first teacher, I was holding everything in because, I'm a guy born and raised in New York, in Queens, was a football player. was not into or didn't even understand how to communicate my emotions or be vulnerable, or why would I ever even want to be vulnerable? Um, all I ever wanted to be was tough. So I held everything in, and it was like creating this immense pressure inside. So then on the third day, on the Wednesday, I laid down in the middle of the floor, opened my arms up, and just allowed the energy to work with me. And it felt like, if you ever remember those like cartoons where the grandfather clock bursts open and all the gears and the springs pop out, that's what I felt from my stomach, my solar plexus, and my heart. And then I sat back in my seat, and then something even crazier happened. It felt like if it was like a big, warm, like gallon of cheese whiz pouring through my brain, right? And melting down everything in my brain. And I asked the facilitator, what's happening? And he said, don't worry, you're just going through, it's just a meltdown. You're melting down all the old structures in your brain that you no longer need. And it was like all the old neural nets and all the defense mechanisms from everything I just let go in the middle of the circle. All that stuff was just melting down. So what we're doing is going below the defense mechanisms, right? And there's times where we express the warrior energy. There's times where we're getting up, stomping to music, hollering, sometimes even cursing. We're exhuming this stuff from ourselves and from our psyche and from our body.
Mhm.
And I never know what's going to come up until we're in the moment in the retreat. And yeah, so we use those moments to express it all so that it's no longer trapped in the back of the psyche or in the body. And then once we do that, we are calling in our own divine essence, our own sweetness. And that's what we're breathing and receiving, and what starts to take root. And we start to build that new structure and a new way of being.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's reformation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it. Yeah, because we have to leave behind everything that's, hurt our feelings. And that's why I think, like what you were saying, Jace, about the combat over, really in childhood, your feelings are hurt. Whereas combat, you're trained to do something and you just do it. You're in chaos. It's just chaos. You don't have time for feelings. No time for feelings in that. And your
Right.
dad did that a lot. No time for feelings. And he was the youngest of 7.
No, so there was 4 in his family, and my Aunt Pat was the youngest. He was the second youngest.
Oh, 7.
Yeah. And with veterans, they're trained, through boot camp. You can't feel, because if you're on the battlefield, you can't feel. It's not a time to start expressing your emotions, right? They train you just to react immediately and move through it. The problem is they're never trained to now stop living that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like taking a Ferrari that runs on nitrous and is meant to go like on a 2-mile track, and saying, okay, now you're going to drive cross country in that same Ferrari, and you're going to gun it. You're going to put the pedal to the metal. So how far would you get from New York if you're going to California like that? The engine's going to blow, right? That's what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. So the way we approach feelings and memories, we're not leaving anything behind. We bring it into the fold and love the living bejesus out of it. We call in so much unconditional love so that the tension and the pain in the memory literally unlocks and releases from the memory, from the trauma in the back of your mind, and from the tension inside your body, until love is all there is. That's the main goal of the work, to embrace all the parts of us that we felt was unlovable, to accept the unacceptable, forgive the unforgivable, and ultimately just love the unlovable. Because we all have moments of feelings like that when we were younger, where we felt isolated, neglected, all alone, and just in a world of pain. So we go into that world, we dive into it, and we turn it inside out
Well,
with
that's why
unconditional
people
love.
carry a lot of pain in their bodies, even that you can help,
Absolutely.
like, hypnosis meditation can really help lift that off, because we're just holding on to our woundings. It's crazy.
The physical transformations are amazing. There was a guy in our last retreat, awesome guy. It was a weekend retreat. had a cane with him the whole entire weekend.
Mhm.
And the final dance on Sunday morning, right before lunch, and then we all go home. The final dance session, I decided to make a playlist that was like really, high energy, joyous, a lot of fun. And this guy, the only way I could describe the dancing was it was like up rocking. If you're familiar with like break dancing, up rocking is like when you're standing up, there's floor moves, power moves, top rocking, up rocking, whatever you want to call it. So he was actually doing top rocking or up rocking from like the 80s with no cane, this huge smile on his face. And I looked at him like, do you see yourself? Do you see what you're doing? And he was like, I might regret it tomorrow, but right now I feel amazing. And I just almost started crying tears of joy when I saw that, because literally the entire retreat was with a cane and a big limp. And this is what happens, I feel, when we embrace the pain, we call in the unconditional love that we're made of, like our own divine essence, and then we throw in the layers of joy on top of that with the movement and the music. It's almost like if you're trying to water your garden and the hose is crimped and the water's just dripping out, and then you uncrimp it, and now you can slowly, enjoyably spray the entire garden with your thumb on the top of the hose, and then like a little rainbow appears in the mist. It is such a beautiful, beautiful experience when people reconnect with it, because you see the light in their eyes, the smiles, the faces change, and there's physical transformations all the time because we're just energy,
Yeah.
you know?
Love it.
That's true. We are energy.
Yeah. And one of the things I just want to share is a lot of times people will ask me, because a lot of times we're working with mantras and affirmations, and they're like, what's your core mantra that you live by? And my whole life since getting into this is like just letting go of identity, letting go of identity. The one thing that I hold on to is all I am is life force energy. And also I am eternal. Those two things, those are the things that I build my like center column of my identity with. All I am is life force energy, and I am eternal. So it kind of puts me into relationship with the mind and the body,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Love it.
Is that what it says on your business card?
So funny, it was supposed to. So many years ago,
Yeah.
you bring up a really cool story. So many years ago, I wanted to kill myself. I actually wanted to die. My son, I was losing him in a family court battle with my son's mother, and he was about 3 at the time. And my next relationship, which I was in for about a year, maybe a year and a half, we were breaking up in the same week. So I was like, I lost him, I lost her. And after being like in a week of depression, I was in the shower and I'm like, I want to die. And then I heard this voice, this huge, loud voice from like 60 feet above and behind me said, "You are eternal." And all of my stress literally went down my body and down the drain. And I was like, what the hell was that? So that's actually what I wanted to put on the card, which was a 3-step stress relief exercise, which is now called stress upper breath work. So anytime you get stressed, you touch the tension, you breathe deep and slow, and once per breath, you silently say, I'm okay. But the original mantra was, I am eternal. But I figured that would be a hard spoon of medicine to serve in like corporate America, because I was doing corporate classes at that time and stuff like that. So I wanted to make it like, cheeseburgers and apple pie. I'm okay is easier to digest, and it works.
It's good.
So
Yeah, it is good.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
But
it. And
thanks.
I love being internal. Yeah.
Yes. And so with meditating and stuff like that, the easiest way that I found that I share meditating is just, closing your eyes, laying down on your back, placing one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly button, and once per breath, silently saying, I'm okay. That disengages your body's fight or flight reaction.
Mhm.
Your emotions calm, your mind becomes clear. And then if you go to the I'm eternal affirmation once per breath, now the meditation takes a whole new birth, takes a whole new, um, puts you in a whole different frame.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to play with that. Try that.
Yeah. Sounds
So
fun.
did you have a 60-foot high shower?
No, No, it was an enclosed stand-up shower in a really cool apartment. It actually had a steam shower. That was the only one I ever had in my entire life. It was a super cool, like little shower, but it was
Yeah.
enclosed in glass. And I heard it like a megaphone. It was like something that was undeniable and it was super loud. Yeah. I felt like it was almost like something that was in my DNA. Like if I ever seriously had that thought, this was the pre-programmed reaction that was just going to go boom, just to like snap me out of it, you know?
But
Right, but
to
you have
come to you at that
the,
moment, though,
yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I felt like it was like a
Mm.
pre-programmed thing that was in like locked inside my soul code or somewhere that was like, if I get there in this lifetime,
yeah.
that's what's going to happen. That's what I'm going to hear because it was like immediate right after the thought. It was almost like in music, if you're side chaining something, if you're producing music and it's like you're connecting this new sound to another sound and it happens every time you hear that sound. That's kind of like what it felt like because it was just like right there and I never heard anything that loud or that prominent like that since then.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? I mean, just what comes through for us, the magic. I mean, because you've had some really great epiphanies, great spirit guides. You have great spirit guides you need to work on the planet. They're not going to let you out of it.
I'm surrendering to it. The spirit guides are an amazing topic. I just want to share a quick story with that.
Okay.
So in one of the retreats last year, there was a woman that could see, and she was an intuitive healer. But she never saw beings. She said she saw three light beings around me the entire weekend. There was one tall one behind me, two off to the side, about a half to three quarters the size of the one behind me. At one point, one of the side ones came out and was in front of me on one knee with a hand open like that. And then at another time, the tall one put one hand up, all the way up, spread its legs, and turned into a triangle of light. So she was seeing things the whole weekend, and she's actually a testimonial on the website. So I think you could see what she wrote on the retreats page if you scroll down that. Um, there was another woman that a few years back, she was at one of our Omega retreats, and she was also an intuitive healer. And she's like, you have a lot of help here, right? And I was like, yeah. So there's always been like someone that can sense energy and see energy that, I've always known there is a ton of help because at certain times, this is also something cool that one of them said, when I get silent, there's certain times where we're doing the mantras and I'll get silent for like 15 to 25 seconds because I'm feeling something shift energetically. But she actually saw the beings shift their formation in the room. And I didn't know that was happening. I just felt energetically like I need to sit for a moment and wait till I get the next message. So I was just waiting, you know. And if you're not okay with being in the moment and just waiting and just sitting there in front of a group of people without saying anything, um, the blabbing kind of cuts the energy flow. So I just have to like sink into it and surrender to it. So really, I'm just a conduit in these retreats. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I try to plan, but the plan never happens. I just surrender. Once we get into the room, I just surrender to what is going to be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have kind of a set plan, but it goes all over the place. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that actually.
Yeah. It's like a backup plan. I have it in an index
Yeah.
card in my pocket.
but
Yeah.
it is surrendering to the moment, to the
Yeah.
present, because that's where we connect with the cosmos anyway, is in the present.
That's where the source comes through for me in the work, just being in the moment and then really asking the person the question, desire of what they want to let go of.
Mhm.
That's where like the magic happens. Once we get to what their soul has just been screaming to let go of, what they really, really want to let go of, or
Absolutely.
what they want. After the group has gone through the letting go phase, which takes like the first 50 to 65% of the retreat, Then we start getting into what do we want? And that's like the icing on the cake when we can start to embody what we really want and thank spirit as we got it yesterday. So now the universe really needs to play catch up with our brain and the way we're interacting with the universe. We often talk about flipping the energetics of it, flipping the magnetics of how we're attracting what we are attracting. Yeah, so we try to play with some of that, that part of the energy too.
Well, it's about being vulnerable, and so sometimes being in that vulnerable state, you attract, you're still trying to be open, and have experiences, risk, and people don't make good choices, even if they, they don't have maybe sometimes a consequences type of insight within them. They decide to go ahead and take these choices, and all the red flags are there, but they just want it at the time, whatever it is that on their is making them feel good on an that outer level. It's not even just even the inner level, it's the outer level.
And the vulnerability is the key. I'm so
Yeah.
glad you brought that up. The
Yeah.
vulnerability is the key. And like I said, coming from a guy from Queens that, my father was out of the house when I was 6, that I remember pushing the stool over to the bathroom sink to practice making a frown because I wanted to look tough in the street. Because at that point I was the oldest male in the house, which is like a joke. I was 6, my brother was 4. Mom was raising us. But out there, it was my role to protect him and to also protect myself. So to be tough, that was like my identity, growing up. And there was times after I was 15 that I decided if anyone was in like a 3-foot radius and they looked like they had a big problem with me, I was hitting first. That's how scared I was, right? And there was really good reasons for that. Getting beat up when I was really young and, things like that to defend myself. But my first teacher said something to me that I never forgot. He said, Brett, your true strength is in your vulnerability. And that was like, you know what I mean? Like, I never thought there could ever be strength in vulnerability, but from experiencing this work, the vulnerability comes from the feeling and being empathic and really opening up to the feeling. And then it's like, when you're starting to really feel the love in the center of your being, then you are it. It's like when we were born and we were like looking at our parents, we're like, oh, they're the source of the love. But no, it's within us. We are the love machine, and we're always creating reality. This is something that I've been working with the last couple of years. Like, I feel like human beings are creating more and more stress in the world because, well, number one, we're over triggered. We're over anxious. We were never taught how to let go of stress. We have a carpet of our ancestral karma that lays over our soul when we're born into these bodies. So we have a lot going against us. But I feel really the key to breaking through it is expression, right? And then connecting with our higher power to command it to shine light through the tension and the pain. And when you do that, you actually feel it come into your body. Again, when you merge that core pain with the light through the power of the spoken word, you could actually just say, Great Spirit, Holy Spirit, Source, whatever you want to say, universe, shine light through all the sadness in my heart, unlock it and release it from the inside out right now. And when you say that and you start breathing into it, embracing the emotion with your breath and your touch, you feel these layers start to come off and peel back like an onion. So that's really what I like doing in the retreats as well, is teaching people how to talk to spirit, how to connect to spirit, and how to work with it. Because that's really how I got my start in this. Because after my first retreat, I came home and started doing the work naturally in 1999 with myself and also with my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, I can't believe this works. Like it's all right there, because our bodies respond to the words we're saying. It supports us without any judgment.
That's why it's important to be, speak positively. I know
Super
people,
important.
will say, oh, that's just hogwash, and it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Programming our brain every second. Like,
Bruce
let's
Lee.
go.
Yeah, Bruce Lee even said, he goes, don't even joke around about saying anything bad about yourself because your subconscious doesn't know the difference. Your
Yeah.
body does not know the difference. So I think there's some saying somewhere in the Bible. I stink with the Bible. I don't not really like learning them, but I could have sworn somewhere in there it says, as a person thinketh in their heart, so they are, or something like that.
Mhm.
And for me, like the stuff in the heart, it's like those core beliefs that stem from our traumas from our childhood, those core beliefs about who we believe we are in the world. If we could just let some of those go and embody what we truly are, then we could start to manifest automatically what we really want. And that's what I'm really focused on working with now in my life. We created a technique called the belief embodiment technique. We did an online workshop on it about 9 months ago. It was amazing, but it actually unearths all the core beliefs that are fighting against what your soul wants to do this lifetime on this planet. It's almost like the wrapping covering up your soul's gift. So we find out what you want to do, what you feel your gift is, what you would love to do on this planet, and then we release all the core beliefs and fears that are impeding that. And then we embody the core beliefs that are automatically going to manifest it for you. And it's amazing once you link up the heart, the subconscious mind, and the universe just kind of clicks in. It kind of creates this manifesting machine because we already are manifesting machines. Just typically we're unconsciously manifesting 90% of all the stress that we see in our lives. So this kind of like reverses that and flips the energetics of that.
Mhm. Yeah. Like it. Love it.
Our powerful process.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of it when you're in the moment with the energy of it, it's almost just like art because you see colors, you feel things. It's almost just like creating art in the human experience on a beautiful, beautiful canvas. That is each one of our lives. So it's almost like you become the artist, you become the lead actor, the lead actress, the director, the writer, the casting director, because we already are all those things. It's just doing it consciously now.
Okay. So I want everybody to be able to find you. So it's brettcotter.com, correct?
Stressisgone.com is the best place to get
Okay.
me.
To get you.
Yeah, so we have the membership there. We have private coaching. We have our awesome retreats there. We have a masterclass there with 22 videos that teach you how to stop your own stress, how to release anxiety in minutes, and how to process and release the pain that is inside your original traumatic memories. So it's videos that guide you through that. And a Marine, good buddy of mine now that has been to many, many of our retreats, he was doing the master class, and in the trauma recovery module, he wrote a really cool comment. He said, I thought I was doing this master class and, learning some things and taking some quizzes. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm actually healing myself because you're actually doing a session inside the master class.
Very
So
good.
you're actually touching and you're getting to taste your own mastery in the master class. So it's a really cool experience, especially for people that are having a lot of stress and anxiety. It's kind of a way to break free.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Love it. So you're going to do a seminar, a retreat from the 9th, did you say, to the 14th or 13th?
Yes. Yeah. So the 9th is a Friday, February 9th at the Himalayan Institute. That's when we're starting. Um, we have our Stevie Nicks music night. We're going to be doing a lot of healing and end up with a really great music set. It's going to be it's going to be a magical way to kick off the retreat. There's an option for you to attend the retreat just for the weekend if you can't stay the entire 5 days, which brings us right up to Valentine's Day on Wednesday. And my goal is that everyone leaves the retreat that stays for the entire week with a completely renewed falling in love with themselves. So no matter who they go home to on Valentine's Day at dinner, no matter who's there, no matter what those people do, or if there's no one there, you are in love with you. And that is the purpose of bringing that retreat right up to Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sounds
Thanks.
fabulous.
Thanks.
Yeah. And you can find Jason. Jason is at
jasondmckean.com.
right. And I'm at terrainsight.com. And Yeah, thank you for being on the show today, Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. I learned a
Really
lot.
love your work. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me on. The questions were awesome, and the connection between the three of us was great. I'm really grateful for, you both having me on.
Thank you.
So, bye everybody. Thank you for listening.